Welcome back. This is Teresa Adams with the Community College of Denver. What we're going to talk about today is reference angles because it will make our lives so much easier, especially when we are trying to find exact values of angles that are partners with the 30, 60, 45, and 90 degrees. So when we're talking about a reference angle, first of all, it's a non-quadrantal angle, which means it's not at the 90, it is not the 0, it is not the 180, it's not the 270, and it's not the 360 degrees. Or in terms of radians, it's not 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So we need to reference, we're going to use a reference angle, and so we're going to talk about theta. And the positive acute angle theta prime, that's what that little tick mark is, theta prime, is formed by going from the terminal side of theta and the positive or negative x-axis, whatever is the quickest way to go to it. So sometimes it'll be the positive x-axis, and sometimes it's going to be the negative x-axis. So let's take a look at our various quadrants. So if we're in quadrant number 1, our theta prime, right here, is the same thing as theta. So our reference angle is the same thing, and we don't have to worry about it. But if we look in quadrant number 2, here's our angle theta. Our theta prime, our reference angle, the one that we're going to use to find the value of, say, the sine of 120 degrees, is we're going to find the sine of that reference angle. So that reference angle goes from, as you can see, it goes from here down. It's the closest one. It's actually closer to the the negative x-axis than it is the positive x-axis. So let's look at quadrant number 3. As we take a look at quadrant number 3, here's our theta, and here's our theta prime. So if I wanted to look at an angle that is more than pi, say I'm looking at 7 pi over 6, then I'm going to figure out what the reference angle is, theta prime. And the way I do that is I'm going to take my angle theta and subtract off pi, because I want to go to the closest, and my closest is the negative x-axis. Down in quadrant number 4, here is my theta, and here's my theta prime. To find my theta prime, it's going to be a full 2 pi, if I'm in terms of radians, or 360 if I'm in degrees, minus my angle theta. That'll give me my reference angle theta prime. So, in other words, if I want to look at the sine of theta, then I can look at positive or negative, depends on where we are, which quadrant we're in, of just the reference angle theta prime. So the sine theta is equal to plus or minus the sine of theta prime. The same thing with its cofunction. The cosine of theta, I can look at it as plus or minus the cosine of theta prime. Again, the plus or minus depends on which quadrant we're in. Also with its cofunction, the secant. Tangent of theta is equal to plus or minus the tangent of theta prime. Again, it depends on where you land, whether or not it's a positive tangent or a negative tangent of theta prime. So let's look at some examples, because up until now it's like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So let's look at a couple examples. We want to find the reference angle in degrees and radians for 300 degrees. So let me make sure I'm in black. So let's draw where this is. Okay, so our initial side is here. We're going to go to 300 degrees. I land right there. So there's 300 degrees. So what I want is I want the reference angle. And the reference angle is going to be right here. So in other words, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 360 minus 300, and that's going to give me my reference angle of 60 degrees. In terms of radians, we know that 60 degrees is pi over 3. Take a look at another one. 7 pi over 6. Now 7 pi over 6, 7 is bigger than 6. That must mean that we're in quadrant number 3. So here's my angle. This is 7 pi over 6. 7 pi is 7. If you look at just the 7 over 6, we know that's a little bit more than 1, but not more than 1.5. So that's why we know it's a quadrant number 3. Our reference angle that we're going to look at is right here. So in other words, I have 7 pi over 6 minus pi, and my answer is pi over 6, or in other words, it is 30. Excuse me. It is 30 degrees. Let's look at another one. Let's look at negative 3 pi over 4. Ooh, can't go any further than that. So as we take a look at negative 3 pi over 4, again, let's figure out where we are. Negative 3 pi over 4, it's more than a half, but less than 1. And we're going negative, so make sure we go clockwise. So we land, again, down in quadrant number 3. And so if this is negative 3 pi over 4, can you guess it? Can you guess what this is going to be? You're right. It's going to be pi over 4, or 45 degrees. And on our next video, we'll actually look at the sine of negative 3 pi over 4, or cosine of negative 3 pi over 4, using our reference angle and making sure that we remember who's positive or negative in those quadrants. Thank you for watching.